Every single Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're coming at you with Want to Know Wednesday. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a question for next week's Want to Know Wednesday. We'll answer it. This week's Want to Know Wednesday question came from last week's YouTube video, and the question is, how can you find off-market deals and how would you structure seller financing? I think that this question came about because I've been talking a lot lately on my stories and in my content about how I think over the next 4 to 18 months, there's gonna be opportunity again for seller financing. Seller financing is a great tool to pick up deals, especially for beginners. I've done numerous seller financing deals, but the last seller financing deal I did was about 6 years ago or so. And over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it's been impossible to do seller financing because why would they do seller financing when there's all these buyers in the market with all this liquidity, all this money? They just haven't had to even think about entertaining it. So even throwing it out there to a seller over the last, from 2016-ish, 17-ish until 2022, until now, they literally would probably laugh at you. Right? And I never even put one out there because, even if it would just come up, people were they didn't want anything to do with it. What's going to happen is there's not going to be a lot of people that are necessarily forced to sell. There will be some of those situations, in which case I don't think those people will be able to even do seller financing. But there's going to be a subset of people who don't have a lot of debt on their properties, have not really pushed rents to where they should have been pushing them over the last 10 or 15, whatever years. And these people that you might be able to get to do some seller financing, they're going to be tired of running the asset. They're going to want to get out of town and potentially move to a warmer climate or just move to a different part of the country. So if you're already in a warmer climate, maybe they're moving somewhere else. Maybe they just want to check out. Maybe they want to be done. Maybe they're tired. The people that I've always done seller financing with in the past who are the sellers, they just happen to be that they were in the game for a long time, running the deals themselves with no help, which is absolutely exhausting and something I would never, ever, ever want to do. I would never want to own 200 units and do it all by myself with no help from maintenance, with no leasing help, with no team. I would not want to be in that position. There's a lot of people out there. I've bought deals from them that they own 45 units or 150 units or 200 units, and they literally do everything themselves. I couldn't imagine doing it. With a large buyer pool right now on the sidelines, meaning a lot of these big funds, they're kind of on pause. They want more clarity of what's going on. A lot of people who already have 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 units are on pause. They want to see what's going to happen. It presents a lot of opportunity for those who have courage to go out into the marketplace and be potentially one of the only bidders on a project. Now, I highly, 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 highly recommend, as always in my content over the last 10 years, I highly recommend you look at getting these deals and look at the long term. Don't look to get into a seller financing deal or pick up one of these deals for a quick flip. Be in it for the long term. If you're in it for a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year play, you're going to come out and you're going to win. How you go about structuring seller financing and how you go about bringing it up. If there's less buyers in the marketplace, where last year there'd be 20 people running at the same deal, a great deal that's on market. Today, on market, maybe only 3, 4, 5, 6 people are going at it. Seller financing probably still won't happen if the deal is on market with a broker. Probably not going to happen. But if you can put in the work and go and door knock and build a list and do drive-bys of property and write down addresses that make sense to you or are appealing to you or you think you can go do, whether it's a duplex, a 4-unit, an 8-unit, a 12-unit, a 120-unit, or a 400-unit apartment building, write it down. You can go online, figure out who the owner is by looking up the LLC. You can then reverse look up the LLC and figure out who the registered agent is. You look up that registered agent on whitepages.com, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pick up the phone, and there'll be maybe 2 phone numbers, 5 phone numbers. There'll be an address. You can write a letter. You can send an email. I recommend doing all of it. I definitely recommend picking up and dialing the phone. And then what you say to them is you say, "Hey, hello, Mr. So-and-so. I'm Justin. I was wondering if between now and the next 5 years, you'd be looking to sell your property." In fact, I'm going to go get my phone right now, and I'm going to show you exactly. Where the hell is my phone? Oh, it's in my sweatshirt pocket. I'm gonna pick up my phone. I'm going to pick up my phone right now because I got a number that I can call. I hope I remember the name of the property. Let me see if I'm going to do a call right now, and then I'm going to leave a message with what I would say if they don't answer.
Hello?
Hey, Randy, Justin Spaulding calling. How are you doing?
You have the wrong number. This is not Randy.
Oh, it's not. Okay, I bet you get this a lot then.
Yeah.
All right.
How did you get this number? Can I ask so I can try to get this to stop?
Well, there's a apartment building that Randy owns, and I looked up who the owner was able to find out it was him, and I looked him up on White Pages, and this is the primary phone number for Randy. on White Pages.
Okay.
You get a lot of people calling you for real estate?
I've had this number for years.
Oh, that's crazy. Do you know a Randy?
No, I don't.
Huh, that's interesting. Crazy. Well, I'm sorry about that.
This isn't the only thing. I mean, I've had a lot of other people calling and.
You own any real estate or no? All right, so that was not Randy. Keep all that in because that was great. That was funny. But if I'm going to dial again, okay? I'm going to pretend right here. But and this is what I would say. It's going to ring, ring, ring. I'm like, hey, is this Randy? Hey, yeah, this is Randy. What do you want? This is Justin. How you doing? He's going to be like really kind of feeling you out like, what the heck? I'm good. What are you calling me for? And that's where I just jump right into, hey, I see that you own X property at X address. I was wondering if between the next 2 months and 5 years, you'd be looking to sell that thing. And then I just shut up and I let them talk. And then what happens is, you can eventually, and I piece in there too. And I let them know, hey, there's no broker involved. I'm buying this for me. I'm not going to look to try to connect you with another buyer and expect a fee. I'm the buyer. On that first phone call, I do not bring up seller financing. The goal of the first contact, whether it is in person or if it's over phone or over email, you do not bring up seller financing right away because they're going to think you're crazy. You need to set the next appointment. That next appointment should be, hey, I'd love to meet you at the property just to take a look at a couple units if you got any vacant, or walk around the grounds if you don't have anything vacant, and just get to meet you and see if we can make something happen. And so and then I just leave it at that. I don't bring up seller finance. And then what happens, you start to go down this path, right, of starting to get the numbers, starting to get them to have an idea they might be ready to sell here. And then at that point, that's where, hey, at some point, as I'm building that relationship with that seller, that's where I bring up the concept of, hey, would you be open to some seller financing on this? And I just put it right out there. Right? But that's not until that first appointment, somewhere it's definitely not on the first contact. It's not on that phone call. On that phone call, I want to get an in-person meeting and get to the property and build rapport that way. And then you can have the conversation, and then you can slip in the seller financing and let them know. And see if that's an option. When we get to, in my opinion, when we get to certain times, and I think we're in one of those certain times, where, again, there's less buyers out there. There's still going to be people that are needing to sell for whatever reason. Seller financing becomes a play again. So now how I structure it, there's a lot of different ways you can structure it, right? How we structured a deal, let's see, back in 2015, deal was $1.2 million. I looked around, I'm in my head, I knew we could get this thing to perform. I knew it was really going to be worth 1.5 to 1.8 in our hands once we did the little magic sauce. If you want to learn how to do the magic sauce, you can come check out our mastermind January 12th through the 14th in Madison, Wisconsin, 3-day event live with me. But we do our special sauce. I knew it would be worth $1.5 to $1.8 million. So what we did was we got it under contract for 1.2. Obviously, prior to getting it under contract, I already had the seller financing thing figured out. The first time I met the guy, he toured me around. I could tell he wanted to sell. I could tell he was a little bit desperate. We're going to have people that are going to be a little bit desperate in these times, potentially. That's when I brought up, hey, would you be open to seller financing here? And I just let him talk. I just try to shut up and let them talk. No matter if they say yes or no, I know that is not the final answer right then and there the first time it comes up because they need to let it marinate a little bit. But I brought it up, so then we got it under contract for 1.2. The bank was going to bring 80% of the equity. Maybe it was 75%. 75% of the equity, the seller was going to hold 25% of the equity. We were buying it for 1.2. He only owed $250,000 of debt on it. He only owed $250,000 on it. So it's not like he was over leveraged. He didn't have that much debt, which that is the perfect scenario for a seller financing deal because typically, if there's still a bank involved, they're going to want to be paid off, right? So in most, again, not always, there's still ways to structure it with a bank, but the less debt they have on it, the better, so they can ideally just take the money that you're going to pay them from, day one if you do have a little bit of a down payment and they hold the rest or, whatever, that they can kind of get that bank out of there, or they have some flexibility and options with that bank who has a small sliver of debt. What we did was the seller was going to finance 25%, the bank was going to finance 75%. So a lot of times people ask me, well, how does it work with a seller? How do you actually pay them back? And in that moment, it's like them being a second bank for you. Right? In a typical deal, when a bank's going to give you 75% of the purchase price as a loan, you need to come up with your own cash and equity to put into the deal for the other 25%. When the seller takes that 25% and holds it, it means he doesn't take it out of the deal when the deal closes. It means that he's not actually paid that deal on closing day. right? My bank came in and still paid him 75% of the purchase price. So he got paid around $800,000, but held $400,000 or so in the deal that I was going to pay back every single month. I was going to pay him principal and interest every single month. Well, because we took that deal from being worth $1.2 million up to $1.8 million, we refinanced it about 18 months after the purchase. When we refinanced it, we paid him off entirely, right? And so when you structure a seller financing deal, what I would do is I would try to make sure you do a balloon payment, but not until 5 to 7 years down the road. You want to give yourself a long enough runway where there's no promises or guarantees, or it's not in any docs anywhere that seller financing is only good for 12 months or is only good for 24 months. Now again, in a certain deal that you find that might be so good, there might be rule breakers here where I could break my own rule and do a seller financing deal where I'd have to balloon payment him back, get him all his money out after 12 months or 24 months after the initial closing. But again, very, very unlikely that I'd structure it that way. I think in that deal, we had 3 years. I've already sent out a couple seller financing offers here recently since things have changed, and they've all been no so far, but at least people are listening and considering again right now. And in those deals, because of there's a lot of uncertainty right now, I actually went out to 7 and 10 years of seller financing. I gave them the verbal confirmation and verbal assurity that, hey, we're going to try to get your seller financing taken care of in 3 to 5 years. But look, I just can't guarantee that. And I need to have a little bit of more runway because of how uncertain things are. And they understood that. So that's just some things to keep in mind. The power of this, though, is pretty unreal, because with that deal that we closed for $1.2 million, right? I mean, I essentially turned zero into over $1 million in 30 months because of using seller financing, right? I literally took zero of my own money. That $0 in 30 months turned into over $1 million in 30 months. And so obviously it's an infinite return. It's hard to beat that return. It's why seller financing is a great place to be. The less money that you have to kind of come up with, and the more creative you can be, the more creative you can have as a structure be, the better, right? Seller financing, what's also unique there is, like, in these ones that I've offered lately, I've been able to give people pricing that was 6 months old, 12 months old, meaning 6 months ago, 12 months ago, prices were a lot higher based on, just because rates, right? Rates were 2.5%, 3% of what we were paying for these big real estate deals. Now they're up to like 6%. With seller financing, if they're going to finance the whole entire thing, which I've had a conversation about, a multi-million dollar deal, multi-deca million dollar deal. We had a conversation about them seller financing the whole thing. Went back and forth a little bit, and actually this has happened a couple times. One group did not listen or reply at all. Another group listened. We went back and forth. I could offer them a price that they didn't think was possible anymore, but it's all down to the terms, right? I could still offer them that price that was good 6 months ago, 12 months ago, not good anymore for any other buyer, because my seller financing offer to them was still a 2.75% interest rate, right? So I was still going to be able to get debt terms using seller financing that could have been favorable enough to still pay a previous price, and the debt's long enough, 7, 10 years out, where I'm not as concerned about it. It was interest only, so it gave me the flexibility to pay principal when I wanted. In my plan and in my underwriting, I basically had it where the first year we paid them the interest plus another $500,000 of principal. Year 2, because we're improving the property, raising rents, increasing efficiencies, lowering expenses, there's gonna be more cash flow there. Year 2 doesn't have $1 million more paid off. The next year, $1.2 million of the debt paid off. And this whole time, it's gonna be cash flowing positively after I pay the interest and after I pay those principal payments to the seller. So then by doing that, that got us to the point where 7 to 10 years from now, our debt, our loan to value was only about 45 to 50%, because I was just accelerating some of those debt payments. There's a lot of creative ways to structure things. What you need to remember is it's all a blank slate, and you get to be creative as you want. Now, just because you're creative as you want doesn't mean the other party is going to roll with it and do it and accept it and you're gonna get someone under contract. But just remember, the more doors you knock on, the more people you talk to, especially in times like this, the more opportunities you're gonna have. And when you have the opportunities, you gotta remember that it's a blank slate. You can be as creative as you want. The terms are actually more important than any price, always and forever. And just play for the long-term mindset. If you play for 30 years instead of 2, you're always going to come out ahead. If you're only playing for 18 months or 5 months or 3 months, that's where things can get hairy.